co-hosting at the Future Blockchain Summit at GITEX this year, the world's largest tech show. We also have the pleasure of executing and running a hackathon that has started, and we call this the BizThon. The idea here is that you take your idea onto the website of TDeFi/BizThon and enter your idea to be part of the hackathon that will reach its final at the Future Blockchain Summit at GITEX. There are 5 tracks to choose from: CeFi, DeFi, NFT, social networks, and 3 other tracks, all of which, if you enter with your idea and it becomes the winning idea, you will enter as an idea and come out as a fully formed company after the BizThon is over on October 21st. So go to our website and sign up and be part of the winning team to win up to $1 million in prizes. And not only that, if you do not have the ability to participate, you have the ability to refer the winning team. And if you do so, we are doing something completely new. We are refer dropping a Lamborghini Huracan, and you can win that by referring the winning team and win a Lamborghini. It's the first time this has ever happened. We will be happy to take questions from anyone during this session with Rohit Goyal that we have the pleasure of having joining us today. Rohit is the founder of Mudrex and an avid entrepreneur, and he will lead us through or tell us what are the key steps, what are the ways of becoming, what does it entail to be an entrepreneur? How much is needed? What do you need to be aware of? But we will take that from the beginning. I'm sure Rohit can introduce himself and his company and how he chose and why he chose to go that path. Welcome to you, Rohit.
Thanks, Henrik. Thanks for the kind introduction. So, hey, everyone. My name is Rohit. I am the founder of a crypto company called Mudrex, and I am also building a community called Mesh Finance. My entrepreneurship journey started, just a quick background about me. My entrepreneurship journey started back in 2010, so roughly 11 years back. And the first company I founded was, I was trying to create Instacart for India. While I did that company for about a year, I realized that I'm not a passionate person for operations. And if you are going into grocery e-commerce business, it's an operations business. And I found out that I'm very much passionate about consumer and technology. So that led me to found my second company called PaxPlay, which was into mobile games. I scaled and bootstrapped that company to 3 million users. And while I was doing that, I landed upon Bitcoin Whitepaper in January 2017. And that's when it was the first time which showed me a picture of future. And I decided this is where I'm going to spend probably next 10 years of my life. And with that, I started Mudrex with few of my friends whom I knew for the last 10 years. And till now, Mudrex have been backed by some of the top investors in the world, including Y Combinator, Nexus Venture Partners, Naval Ravikant, and Village Global. And so far, we have helped roughly 40,000 people trade more than $1.5 billion in crypto. And now we are also building a community called Mesh Finance. And Mesh Finance is a community which is on a mission to bring decentralized finance to every human in the world. So that's about me. Happy to dig in more.
Excellent. And when you've had a path, obviously, what guided you in sort of the one step to the other to the next? What were the key indicators that you saw in your choice to eventually end up in Mudrex?
Yeah, so I think like over the time, I realized there are a couple of key things which matters when you are building something, anything like building a company or building a project. The first thing that matters the most is if you are passionate about it. That means you are doing it for the love of doing it and not because you think that it might become big or you might end up making a lot of money in future. Because that is going to be a long journey and it might get frustrated. So you might not be able to survive if you absolutely love doing what you are doing. And that was the point where I connected with my first company, as I mentioned in my intro. Like I realized operations was not something I loved doing. And if I am not loving that, then I'm not going to survive doing that for 10 years of my life.
Right.
Then the second thing I realized were what matters most is like whom you are building something with. So your team. And if you mention like Mudrex, I started with my close friends whom I knew for the last 10 years. So I know them like in and out, their characteristics, like what they care about. And through tough times, we will be able to like sell this boat together, because building anything like walks you through a tough time. There might be like fights in the team, and only the strongest team survive, who is rational, who can understand each other on a broader level. And the third thing I realized while I was building the gaming company and then I moved to crypto was I saw the future, and it happened to be very naturally. So I landed up on Bitcoin Whitepaper. And then when I read the Bitcoin Whitepaper, I quickly connected that crypto is not just about different assets. It's an innovation which is making humanity or human coordination much more efficient. Now that's a very, very big thing to say, because like if you really think about it, all humans have is coordination. Like we are able to right through the cell compared to any other species or animals, because we can coordinate in larger groups. And crypto enables you to coordinate in humongous groups by bringing in incentives aligned, bringing equal access to everyone. That's when I realized like this is where I want, like this is the future I want to help build. And with that in mind, like I started the journey of creating Mudrex.
Were your previous companies in blockchain as well?
No. So my first company was in e-commerce grocery. My second company was in mobile. Then Mudrex was the first company I started building in crypto. And obviously like Mudrex is still going strongly. We are growing more than ever.
Right. So you mentioned shortly the community. I've also done startups in other areas, both in construction and in software, security software. And I find that the community surrounding blockchain and is such a giving community and such a participating community. Can you speak a little bit to that?
Yeah. So if you think about crypto, like with crypto, we are trying to create a bottom-up society. What it means is first you bring a set of people who believe in some mission, some values. And then this community kind of figures out together, how do we achieve our mission and values? How do we grow ourselves? And as you might have noticed, so Mesh Finance is a community of people who want to bring decentralized finance benefits to everyone. So what it means is we are trying to bring everyone together who thinks that decentralized finance brings equal financial access to every human. And at the same time, they understand that right now it is very nascent, like it is in the hands of few technologists, people who are really good with tech and finance. But it is not beyond that. So it's a community who believe that there are goods for the society, there are benefits to the society, and we want to make those benefits mainstream, like what it meant to be. And when you create a community, then like you don't operate as a centralized operations. Like you start operating in the way, okay, now everyone raises their voice that, hey, probably we should build this product because this product might be able to reach 100 million people instead of like creating this product. So all this small decision making starts happening through the community, basically by the people, instead of in a centralized organization. any decision making happens from a top down approach. So there is a CEO who says like, okay, we need to build this. Then there will be the layer of managers who will tell their juniors, and that's how the information flow and the decision making is going. So like that's the basic difference. And as a crypto, we generally believe that bottom up society could be much more efficient when we don't give power to few individuals or few institutions. Instead of that, it is the whole system which is making us coordinate among each other.
Right. Good. Well, excellent comments. So another thing you mentioned bootstrapping. So how have you funded your companies, and how much time have you spent doing that? Maybe you need to warn people a little bit about the fundraising part as well.
Yeah. So I will say like, I probably have been broke almost all of my life, other than the last 2 years of my life. And everything I've achieved in the last 2 years of my life have been the result of the last 8 years of my life where I've been broke. So you can understand in this way that you have a dream, you are going after that dream. And at a point of time, only that dream matters. And for that, you are making sacrifices. And the way you are making sacrifices is that like you can end up making any amount of money if you work on something else. But the only reason you are doing this is because you just love doing it. So for my second company, like to do that, obviously you need to survive. And I like the thing I was building, there was no venture capital for that, for mobile gaming, especially in India. So I started figuring out ways, how do I monetize this thing? And then we started figuring out ad models. So like I kind of self-fund modeled that, and then suddenly created a mathematical model where I knew, okay, if I'm going to acquire a customer, it is going to cost me like $1. And if I end up making more than $1 from a user within 1 to 2 months of the acquisition, like I can create this self-generating machine. So that's how I was able to survive with the mobile gaming company. And I think by that time, then I had created some credibility, which helped us raise the pre-seed round when we were starting Mudrex. And yeah, so that's how like we funded Mudrex after that. And then we obviously...
And did you go through friends and family before as well, or?
Yeah.
Really?
So our first set of investors were people whom I met when I was building gaming company. Like it were the same type of investors whom I spoke with when I was building a gaming company. So now some of these people who have the money, they know you like, okay, you are a right person to build a company. For them, like previously you are probably not working on the right idea, and now you are working on the idea that they can fund, and that kind of helps.
So that is an incentive for people not to give up if they, you know, as I say, fail and fail again, right?
Exactly.
It's the only way forward, unfortunately. Excellent. You also mentioned starting it with friends and people that you know well. I know it's a little bit premature, but part of entrepreneurship, as I find it, is also finding new people. And how do you do that today compared to how it was before?
Yeah.
In a blockchain world versus a non-blockchain world, I can say.
So yeah, in a blockchain world, it is a little bit different because as I mentioned, like you are not trying to create a company. Instead, you are trying to create a community. So in a blockchain world, what matters is like how strong you can spread your values, your mission, and you can get other people excited about it. And then how do you make the incentives aligned? So in a company, like you hold equity, and then you probably give some equity to like your early employees, you divide equity between your co-founders. Here you can say like, hey, like we are building a community. There is no financial entity which represents that. But in future, probably we can release a token which represents what we are building. And people who will help building this, they will earn some part of that token. And it will be all fair launch decided by us all together instead of like 5 people sitting in a room. So that is the way in blockchain people do that. In a traditional company, you try to find people whom you know personally, like most likely people you have worked with in the past, or people you went to college with or school with. So anyone like you can know, okay, like this is the person who is my good friend, and he also is a complementary skill set with me. So like if I am from the business background and my business needs tech, then the other co-founder should have the technological background. So that kind of combination works best.
Mm. Very cool. So now that you've formed a company, is everything hunky-dory? You just sit back, smoke big fat cigars, and then everything is easy, the company takes care of itself? Or what's going on now?
Absolutely not. Like, you can probably imagine, like, it is going to be a long journey, and it doesn't mean that it is going to be a tiring journey, because, like, again, remember, you are doing because you love doing it, so you are never going to get tired of it. It's just that, like, you will be crossing the old challenges, and then you will be trying to solve the new challenges. So, like, when you are starting, probably your first challenge will be like, okay, like, I need to find one customer who is ready to pay to use this. Then your goal becomes, okay, how do I now find 100 such people? Once you have crossed 100 people, then you start figuring out, okay, like, your product has bugs, or like your system is broken, you need to fix them to reach to 1,000. So it's a continuous building plus reaching out to new people plus building plus reaching out to a broader audience. So it's going to be a long journey, and I'm sure, like, if you are doing something which you love doing, you are going to love this.
Speak a little bit more to how would a new team with a new idea, how would they actually physically, technically, internetedly go about building a community for a new project? Where do they go? I mean, I'm new, I know nothing. Who do I turn to?
Yeah, so I think the first, and this is like the most important part of building a business or a community or a company or whatever, is who is going to use this. You need to think about that. And then you need to reach out to those people, have to have one-on-one conversation with your early users, like, who is going to become my user? When you do the conversation, don't ask them like, hey, I'm building this, what's your thoughts? That way you are never going to get insights. Instead, try to ask them question like, for an example, let's do a case study of, if you are the one who is trying to create Robinhood. Now the product you are trying to create is a place where people can buy and sell stocks easily. So you want to talk to people who already have some finance backing behind them. Like, they have probably not college students. You are going to go someone who is graduating from college, who is making a salary. Now you are going to ask them question, hey, like, do you own any stocks? That should be your first question. That's the basic question, so that you know how many people, first of all, like, actually hold stocks. If they say, no, I don't hold stocks, you ask them why. Like, do you know what is stocks, or like, why is that? And then this person might say, no, because like, I think it is very complicated, you have to fill these forms. And then you suddenly start realizing, okay, like, the person wants to buy the stocks, but this is the problem they are facing. So if I can solve that problem, then this user becomes my user. And that's how you start converting to the first level of your product. And then you talk to 100 such people, so that you get more and more feedback. So you can say, like, the first 100 customers you should have that deep relationship with, you really speak to them, and then that's how you build a really great product which can scale to hundreds of thousands of users.
And do you think doing surveys and other...
It doesn't help. It doesn't help, to be honest, like, because in surveys you can't get insights. And just like we did a conversation, with that conversation, I was trying to get what you were expressing, and then I was trying to come up with a new question. So it's like you are trying to go to the bottom of the problem instead of the surface of the problem.
Exactly. And you can't go, that was my point. You can't go out, just hand out a survey and
exactly
feedback. Excellent. What should a company, or what should a new idea, an aspiring entrepreneur, what should he look for results wise within, say, the first 3 months? You mentioned getting the first 100 clients. Is that within the first 3 months, or is that before you even start the project? What's the timing on that?
Yeah, so it can't be hard coded. It depends on problem to problem. Like, if you are building something hardware, it might take a lot of time. But what you should do is you should always try to get the market validation. So if you are building something which might cost a lot, let's say that is only a hardware device which might cost hundreds of thousands of dollars, and only big enterprises are going to use it, then let's go and talk to them and try to get their letter of intent that, okay, if you build this, they have some intent to buy this. So that becomes like one of the key metrics. The best metric is like, if you can actually sell something without even building it, like if somebody is ready to pay $10 before it is launched, which is called pre-sale kind of things, they goes best. like the next best is like try to get your first dollar as soon as possible. The sooner you start making revenues, the sooner you become independent in your financial decision making, and then you can really scale the business both from a venture backed perspective or from a non-venture backed perspective.
I could not agree more. I was unfortunate enough to be hired by a company years ago that wanted to build the perfect product before they put it on the market, and had raised a lot of capital to do so, but of course ran out of capital. So they hired me as an investor relations person to go in and see if I could raise capital for them. And we met with several very, very, very interested investors, but they said the same thing. Listen, guys, you're so expensive right now because you've built such a fine product, but your revenue stream is zero.
Yeah.
So the money we have to put into you now is so much capital.
Yeah.
And you have no revenue stream whatsoever, even though you have a great product.
Exactly.
And there we sat with our, we sat on our hands basically, right? We couldn't move, but we had everything right. So I strongly second that to anyone listening, that revenue is key, and cash is king, and money at hand is the best thing you can have. So I'm very happy to hear that from you. Speaking of blockchains, that often brings up a token conversation. How do you go about pricing your token? And listen, I wish I had the answer to this question. How do you price your token when you want to start out?
Yeah, so now there are a couple of ways to release a token. So you might be raising funds using your token, which is called private sell. In this case, you are privately pricing the token. So the investors who is giving you the money, they are pricing the token. So let's say you go to a venture fund like Andreessen Horowitz, you say, hey, I want to raise $2 million for $20 million valuation. So that means the whole market cap of your token is right now $20 million. Now, that's not the market price. That's still like some entity decided that price. It is not trading at that price. It is not liquid at that price. So you start gathering the community, and then you need to make sure you do a certain number of token floats. So let's say 15% of the token supply is into the market, and the token is trading on any open marketplace like a Uniswap, at least like for a decentralized exchange. So that's when people can actually buy, and they actually market, they actually make the price of the token. So you can't really engineer it. You can only see the after effects of it when you actually distribute it to the right people. And as in traditional business, if your community is really strong, if you already have users, if you already have revenues, your token will be really, really priced out really well.
And maybe you can talk a little bit to, once you do sell the token and you then have to set up for putting it on an exchange, how does that process work or function, or what's the procedure?
Yeah. So first of all, there are two types of exchange you can list your token on. So the first type is the decentralized exchange. And as the name suggests, these are permissionless. These are decentralized. You don't have to go to any person to list your token. You can basically just deploy your own pool which is basically a smart contract, and you can list your token. Now, if anybody wants to trade, they can just directly trade on using that smart contract. The second kind of exchanges are centralized exchanges like Coinbase.
And a good decentralized exchange would be?
Yeah, so like the best ones are Uniswap, SushiSwap. Then there are some futures exchanges as well, like DYDX. And in case of centralized exchanges, that includes Coinbase or Binance. So these exchanges usually have their listing teams. So you have to reach out to their teams. You have to pitch like, hey, like our token is spread around 2,000 people. So like the number of people your token is in hands in, it becomes beneficial to the exchange as well, because now they are getting 2,000 users if they list your token. So that's the way usually like the exchanges, centralized exchanges, make their decision making on.
How much you bring to their platform? How many
people, so
potential new users?
Yeah, so I think like if you have anywhere from 2,000 or more than addresses holding your token, and if it is like widely decentralized, the distribution of the token, at least some of the good exchanges will be happy to list you. That includes like KuCoin or for an example, Bitmarks. And then like, depending on number of users, depending on who is backing you, depending on how strong is your community, Binance and Coinbase will also like to list you.
And of course, there's a cost involved. Binance, as you mentioned first, would be, the most expensive of all of them, I think. But how to say this? How would you manage your capital raise or your token sale? What metrics do you need to put in there? And listing the token is obviously one of them, right? How much money you have to put in there. And in my estimate, at least $100,000 to $250,000 needs to be allocated to that. And then you need to set up your token sale accordingly. Maybe you can share a little information about that too.
Yeah, so now it depends like how you are actually releasing your token. So the first way is like you are retroactively distributing your token to your users. So like Uniswap did, for an example. So it actually distributed 15% of their tokens to all the existing users, and that were already in the numbers of like more than 5,000. So now any exchange will be happy to list it by themselves. Uniswap team never did go to any exchange, like centralized exchange, to ask them like, hey, can you list our tokens? Instead of that, it's the reverse way, that Coinbase saw that like this token has a large community. If we will list this token, this will bring us users. So they will just list it for free. Binance will list it for free. But let's say you are a small project right now and you are trying to get a lot of activity on your token. That's when like you will like to go to these exchanges and try to build a partnership with them, that, okay, like if you list our tokens, we are going to give you this many number of tokens. And then probably you will need a market maker, because right now your liquidity pool is not really big. So to that market maker, you might need to give anywhere from $100,000 to $1 million in equal ratio of your token and stable coins, so that they can define the price on that exchange and they can create the liquidity.
And how often do you use a market maker?
So we don't. We haven't released our token yet, for the same reason. Like we are trying to distribute it to our users, and we will just list it as the token supply, floating token supply crosses 15%, so that we don't really have to follow this process.
Right. Very cool. I had another question for you a little bit before, which goes back to the software development part. How many people in-house do you have compared to a community outside?
Yeah. So as I mentioned, like since there are two different projects, so Mudrex is a company which we are building and Mesh is a community. In Mudrex, there are 40 full-time people who are working with us, out of which probably 20 people are ex-founders themselves. In Mesh, there are only 2 people from the team who are working, and there are more than 50 contributors in Mesh. So these are people who are just contributing in an open source way. Some of them code, some of them help with the design, some of them help with the community growth, some of them help with the content creation.
And so, how do you reward these people?
How do we reward these people? So yeah, right now what we are trying to do is we are trying to issue NFTs to all the contributors. Now what these NFT means is that, first of all, we are recognizing that whoever is, kind of supported the project, whoever is investing their time, they are earning some reputation. Then tomorrow when we will be launching our governance token, what we can do is like anyone who holds these NFTs, they can claim this number of tokens. So it's basically recognition as well as the tokens in the way in which like we are rewarding these contributors.
Very cool. All right, Rohit. Any other thoughts on entrepreneurship that you want to share?
So I think some people ask question on the chat as well. Maybe we can.
Yeah, I think I've given you those questions too. Yeah, but we can take more questions if there are any, of course.
So other point, probably like what I can suggest to any entrepreneur is like, if you are building something which will need a lot of capital, then storytelling, learn more and more about storytelling. Like, what is the future you are trying to build? Many times, and this I've done myself, and that's why like I'm sharing this. Many times, like as founders, we think it is about the product, but it's actually never about the product. It's about a future picture which you are trying to create, and product is just the journey to reach to that stage. So you need to find out what is that picture you are trying to create, and that's what you need to pitch to all the investors to venture capitals.
I think that's very smart. I've spoken to, of course, a bunch of companies. That's what we do, since we are an accelerator. And some of the smartest people I've met with the brightest ideas are talking almost 100% about the products. And I remember talking to this company, and they had the nicest idea. And I said to them, listen, give an example. Just make a story. It doesn't have to be true, quote unquote. It is true because it's their mission, right? Yep. So it's always a way. And once we got into a story-based presentation, everything just made sense. Suddenly I understood what these guys were trying to do, actually a guy and a lady. And I was like, you know what, guys, now I got it. Now you sold me the idea rather than pitch me a technical run through of your product, which I'm not able to understand it, but the application thereof made no sense to me.
Exactly.
When you say presentation, so everyone talks about a white paper, and 5 years ago, if you had a white paper, you could send that to an investor and they would give you $5 million. I today tell our projects, that you have to have 3 different presentations plus a white paper. You have to have a one-pager that you can shove in people's faces in an elevator, your elevator pitch. You have to have a 3 to 5 page presentation, which is this is what you send to an interested party. And then if you're lucky, they'll read the 3 to 5 pages. Likely they'll only read the first page, but at least they'll have it and they'll see the sustenance and they'll see that it's correctly sized. And then lastly, you have to have a 10-page, 12-page presentation, which is your 1-hour pitch for a meeting with an investor. And when that meeting is over, that's when you send him the white paper, which can be infinitely long. But that's when you've pitched your idea and you've got him, right? And that is really what we're trying to promote as well. I don't know if you have any thoughts on that, but
we actually follow the exact same process, by the way. We literally follow the same process. So instead of a one-pager, we just send like a blurb, which is like 3 to 4 lines, and post then like it's a small presentation, and then during the meeting it's a big presentation. And if anyone wants more info, we then send them a link to our memo. And a memo is like just a text document which answers to every question in detail.
Right. And when an investor comes to you, what do you have to have ready for them? They've seen the presentation, they like you. What are the next steps after that? How do you actually extract money from an investor?
Yeah, so let me share quickly how the venture capital raising journey in generally goes. So I think first step comes as the introduction to the right people. So here the founder should do really good work, because you need 2 things when you are trying to reach out to an investor. First, you need to make sure you are trying to reach out to the right investors, which makes the right sense for your business. So you need to search them, where all they have invested, whether they are interested in your market at all. If you are building a software company and you are trying to reach out to an investor who is more focused on bio, chances are you are just wasting your time. So just do your research. Then the second important thing is try to find a mutual connection who can make the introduction to you, a warm introduction from a friend, especially from a founder who have raised capital from them. That's the most effective. Once you go through them, very high chances are you will get the first meeting. In that first meeting, you will probably pitch to one partner what you are trying to do. And this will be half an hour to 45-minute meeting. Again, there is no standard, but that's the typical. After that, if they are interested, he will try to set up a whole team meet where he will have other partners. And after that meeting, usually they make decision. So best investors complete all this process within 2 weeks. The slow ones can take anywhere from 4 to 6 weeks.
What we see often is that it creates a ripple effect or a snowball effect if you find the right investor. Because the right investor has one thing that he really wants. He really wants to make money out of his investment. and he speaks to other people about his investment. And if he puts, a couple of $100,000 into a company, he doesn't want to lose $200,000. It's difficult to get people to write a check for $10.
Yeah.
So he will know other people, and you should always ask an investor. So we're super happy to have you on board. Maybe you know someone else that would be interested in this, and 9 out of 10 times it's like, yes, of course I have introductions for you.
Exactly. So especially these days, it is easier with safe docs and soft docs. So safe is like a simple agreement for future equity, and soft is simple agreement for future token. So you don't really have to go into like a detail page. You can actually use Y Combinator standard docs as well for this. It is publicly available. Mm-hmm. And you just sign with the investors who agreed, even if they are putting $10,000 in your business. If you are taking it from the right person, then you just quickly ask them like, hey, can you make intro to the people who can maybe like put in more than $50,000 as well? And that's how like you find the next set of investors.
When do you take in an equity investor versus a token investor?
Yeah, so if you are building something which is more fit for a token, then you would like to go for a investor who has invested using tokens, in tokens. If you are building like a traditional company with equity perspective, then obviously like you are not going to go to the token investors.
And you could do a combination of both, but it would generally be after you've done a token raise, then you have a second round or a round A, where you would raise capital for the company itself, not the token.
Yes, exactly.
Excellent. Cool. Well, I don't know if we've given everybody the recipe for becoming an entrepreneur, but I believe we have at least shed some light on the process and what it means and entails to be an entrepreneur. I mean, it's a 24/7 job. You are always thinking about your company. You are always concerned about the next thing. It's a super interesting and exciting procedure, and it's a truckload of work, but it's fun at the end of it.
It's definitely fun. So it's definitely fun.
Cool. I don't know if we have any other questions from the attendees, but happy to take some questions if there are any. There might be one there. What are the prerequisites for a startup to raise funds?
So got it. So now it depends how much funds are you talking about. I think the prerequisite is like you need to have an idea which could be really big. So imagine I was talking about the picture.
I think maybe we're talking a little bit more about the technical startup. I think you have to have a formed company. So you have to have an entity somewhere that people can pay into, a bank account and so on and so forth.
Yeah. So like what I was trying to say is like some people raise capital on just an idea, like no piece of presentation, no piece of code, nothing at all, basically. And they raise it because they have reputation. But for most people, I think the best time to raise capital is like when they either are just about to launch their product, or if they have got some number of customers. It could be any number of customers. For some, like it could be 10 number of customers. For some, like it could be 1,000 number of users, depending on what kind of a business you are building. So for an example, if you are building a social network, then probably 10 users doesn't mean anything. Like you might need 10,000 users. But at the same time, if you are building a SaaS business, then probably you just need 10 institutions using your product.
Yeah. Yep, I think that is correct. Another prerequisite would be to have your company formed, and there are some distinctions to be made, especially when you talk about tokenized companies, where generally you have a BVI entity or something like that where you can register and your company.
Yeah, so like it actually depends. Some companies can just survive completely on chain, like they don't need to exist at all in any form of corporation structures. Right. And the examples are like SushiSwap. It doesn't have any company, but it's a big organization at the same time. But most companies will need to register in some geographies. Some people registered in Singapore, which is pretty friendly to blockchain in general. Most people register in BVI because of the regulatory issues might be the lightest there. And all you need this only when you are actually signing the SAFT. So because you don't really have the token, you are signing an agreement with some people, and that's why you need to register this entity.
I think we've touched a lot of different subjects here. Maybe we've been jumping a little bit forth and back. I have a question here from Japneet saying, it would be great if you can guide through the road of entrepreneurial, the road of an entrepreneurial journey. If you can throw some light on the process itself, maybe go from a little bit helicopter view from A to Z.
Yeah, so I think like it starts with some founder realizing some problem which he or she faced personally. It could be like you are traveling and you saw like no cabs are stopping for you, and with that moment you think like cabs are a problem. So it starts from there, and then you try to think like what I will need to build to solve this problem. So you will need probably someone in the technical background, someone from the marketing background, and that's how you try to assemble your co-founding team first. Once you have the co-founding team, you start building and progressing towards solving that problem and try to prove that you can solve that problem. Once you achieve that point, you try to raise some funds if your business require external funding, if it doesn't make revenue on day one. With the capital, then you try to hire more people and you try to like reach out to more users, you try to mature your product, and now you are trying to define goals, which could be like, oh, okay, I need to achieve week over week growth. A really solid metric in the early stage a founder should try to is 10% week over week growth, or whatever it is. Like just measure what is your week over week growth. Don't go and don't plan for 3 months or 6 months, because in the early phases you need to be formidable, because you know the problem but you don't know the solution. All the products you are trying to build, they are hypotheses at this point. So keep experimenting quickly and try to get strong data points. When you will actually have product market fit, there will be signs. For an example, even though your product have bugs, people are still using it. That's a sign that people really need your product. Another sign could be like you have really priced out your product really well and still people are buying it. So that's like if anyone is paying money for this, that's the best sign of product market fit. Yeah. Then you start working on the scaling solution. Okay, now I have reached 200 people or 1,000 people. How do I take it out to like hundreds of thousands of people? So probably for that, some companies raise later stage funding. That could be like Series A rounds, Series B rounds. Start focusing more on the growth. Then like as the company grows, like more number of investors come in, and then you try to target some form of an exit, either in form of acquisition, that there might be some other company who want to use your product within their ecosystem, like Microsoft buying Slack, for an example, could be a good acquisition, for an example, or you go public.
Yeah, no, I mean, for us at TDeFi, when we bring people into our accelerator, we generally say that there should be either an existing business that wants to go onto blockchain, or if you are a blockchain entity, you have to have an MVP, a minimum viable product, to show before we start engaging. I would also say that that should be your benchmark for starting to talk to investors, is that there has to be something presentable. It can't just be a white paper as it was 5 years ago. It has to be something tangible.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Cool. Rohit, thank you so much. And to all the attendees, if you have an idea, join our BizThon. That is really all you need. We will guide you through the process. This is what we do. This is what the Hackathon BizThon is all about. It's about bringing an idea to fruition through a procedure of coding and meeting people and education and mentoring, which is something that we do with pride. Thank you all for joining us today. Thank you to Rohit for sharing his knowledge and his experience. It's been very interesting having you here today. And with that, thank you so much.
Thanks for having me, Henrik.
My pleasure.